So I thought I'd start getting back into the habit of making these segments again, just kind of recording my thoughts on like everything that's going on in the U.S. and I guess the world going on lately. I don't know, just it's a lot to take in sometimes, and well, it's busy, so it's easy to kind of neglect this habit. But trying to get back into it right now. So anyhow, let's start with the first story. If you've been concerned about the southern border, you probably would have heard about this. Down in El Paso, I mean, there's a giant migrant caravan that's waiting to cross the border once title or with the ending of Title 42, right? And so there's a bit of a divide in the locals over there, and that makes sense. I mean, you're going to have thousands of people that just come across into the city. Personally, I'm against it. It's just these people aren't. They're here as economic migrants. They want better jobs and opportunities, which can be respectable. But the fact is, it's like you can't let in everyone who wants that, because then what you do is it's stupid, but apparently you have to constantly explain basic economics. If you import lots of cheap labor, people who who are willing to accept lower prices, what happens is that wages go down for ordinary people, and so therefore it hurts working class individuals. It's relatively simple. This is what happens when you import tons of low skill immigrants. I mean, this has been a concern throughout U.S. history. I remember once during a college history assignment, what was it? I read a book called The Johnstown Flood, and there were like immigrants from Eastern Europe, I think Hungarians, and there was one of their similar concerns that there were lots of immigrants. Hungarians were one of them, but there were other groups, and basically the people who had already been there in the established U.S. And for context, the Johnstown flood happened back in like the 1870s or 1880s or somewhere around there. Basically, you have the Industrial Revolution going on. In any case, yeah, you have all these immigrants coming in. People are upset about it because you have a bunch of union working class guys in the town, and they're upset that these immigrants are coming in accepting lower wages and essentially like hurting their odds of being able to get a better wage for their labor. So it should be a pretty straightforward thing, but apparently it's racist if you say anything about it. All right, moving on. This is the story I want to talk a little bit about. So it's not exactly the most recent thing, but it's something that's been on my mind. It's about what's going on in Texas, really. So in order to understand the story, you have to go back to the 2022 election. Let's see. I think that this story might explain it better. 4 things voters should know about the Chronicle's investigation into Harris County's ballot shortage. So, just to kind of summarize it, what's happening in Texas right now, the Texas Senate passed a bill where, let's make sure this is muted. Yeah, it's muted. Okay. So the Texas Senate passed a bill that allows the Secretary of State to overturn elections, and that's specifically for Harris County, which is basically Houston. And that's the county with the highest population. And now, Harris County has a population of about 4.7 million people, I think. There's a lot of people in it. The minimum requirement for a county in order for the Secretary of State to get involved is for like 2.7 million. And apparently Harris County is the only county in Texas that actually meets that requirement. So if there's some criteria that's met, then the Secretary can overturn the election and call for a new one. Those criteria are things like if 2% of the total amount, if there's a margin of error in 2% of the vote because of like paper shortages for ballots, I think that's one of the requirements. And so that law was specifically passed in relation to what happened in the 22 election, where you had this local judge, Lina Hidalgo, right? Lina Hidalgo was, back during COVID, basically the COVID czar of Houston, right? So I'm not sure how it works in other states, but in Texas, when there's emergencies that have been declared, judges can essentially act with executive power. And so she was dreaming up a whole bunch of wish lists of things that a lot of people don't really like. Well, people in a red state like Texas don't really like it. Now, Houston is a Democrat city. Lina Hidalgo is a Democrat. So it's kind of not that surprising as to why she would have won her election, but I don't think Houston's quite as blue as like places like New York City or Los Angeles. Like, Houston is suburbs. There's a lot of suburbs. And so you can actually have Republicans they're not seated to win. They're probably going to lose most elections, but you shouldn't count them out. They can be competitive. And so here's the deal. In Harris County, you had 55%. So there was let me reword that better. You had shortages of paper ballots in Harris County in the 22 election. Of the areas that had shortages, 55% were Republican, 45% were Democrat. So basically, Republicans were upset by the fact that, hey, we think you guys screwed us on purpose because Harris County is a Democrat-controlled county, and so therefore they think, hey, you guys protected your judge within Hidalgo. And apparently, the Texas GOP was mounting a pretty serious campaign to oust her from her position, replace her with someone else, a Republican, obviously. Didn't work. Republicans cried foul. They thought that there was something kind of nefarious going on, so they passed this law, basically saying, hey, if there's a shortage of paper ballots, then we can basically overturn the election, or the Secretary of State can. And some people might complain, like, oh no, this is abusing power, but it's awfully convenient for them. And for the record, it's not like there was a large margin of error, or there's a large discrepancy in the votes. There was it came down to 1% vote difference. And so the law basically says that if there's 2% vote difference, then the Secretary of State is allowed to do it. So you need 2% vote difference, and you need a shortage of paper ballots, and then the Secretary of State can overturn the election. Anyhow, there was a 1% vote difference, and it was a difference of about 20,000 votes, which is a pretty doable amount of votes when you think about it. So yeah, it's very possible that this could have resulted from that. And there was about, let's see, I think there are 20 polling locations that had those shortages in total. So if we extrapolate from that, we can say about 1,000, potentially 1,000 people at each voting location maybe didn't get the chance to vote, and that could have affected Republicans' chances of winning. Maybe Hidalgo would have won anyway, but there's justification to cry foul on that. It's like, how many registered voters should be in your approximate area, so you should probably get about as much paper as you can expect. The fact that you ran out of paper, in my opinion, is just ludicrous. You should not have run out of paper. Anyhow, the Houston Chronicle launched an investigation into these claims, and that's basically what they found. Now, obviously, this is a left-wing outlet. They framed it as though the Republicans are taking things a bit too extreme, but that's essentially what was found. And so Republicans are correct in that they were unfairly disadvantaged because of the either incompetence or the malicious intent of these precincts. And, you can speculate as to either one. I don't think it's proof to definitively say, but it worked out awfully convenient for the Democrats, right? Oh yeah, I can't access this one. I wanted to read this one, but don't really have subscriptions. A bit cheap that way. Eventually I might have to get some, though, Anyhow, so yeah, this is the text of the bill. So it's SB 1993, passed in the 2023-2024 legislature. I'm pretty sure it has to go through the House and then get signed by the governor, and then it has to go back to the Senate. But it would have to go through the House, then it has to go back to the Senate to make sure that the language matches up, and then it gets signed by the governor. And I would expect that this to go through. The fact that it made it past the Senate, in my opinion, is evidence enough that, this could make it. But speaking of election troubles, I think the Kari Lake election is actually pretty interesting. And so we got this story from Newsweek. Kari Lake scores huge win as Arizona election case heads to court. So for those of you who don't know, Kari Lake was essentially the Arizona Republican candidate for the governorship, and she lost by a margin of about 17,000 votes. And she did. She launched the lawsuits, made a bunch of claims. I didn't think it was going to go anywhere, but it did actually. It made it to the state Supreme Court. I didn't follow it as best as I could, but I'm surprised that she's made it this far. And from what I've read about it so far, it seems as though she's gotten about 100. So her team has presented in court that about 174,000 ballots were approved at a rate of 3 seconds each. So that means that so I think these are mail-in ballots. So you have a person who's at a computer and they scroll through the PDF of the mail-in ballot essentially, and they have to verify the signature to make sure this person is authentic, right? This is the person actually voting. And these things are approved at a rate of 3 seconds each, and you have to scroll down a significant ways apparently in order to get to that signature. And so the claim that's been going in court is that these people didn't do it. And apparently on the computer log, it shows that the scroll down function wasn't even being used. So therefore, you're not even scrolling down to actually look at the signature, which you would have to do. And so therefore, it seems like they're just forcing in votes. And this is for Maricopa County specifically. And so it seems to me as though Democrats were intentionally trying to set things up to help themselves win. I mean, that's a speculation. That's what I would think. That's my opinion. But it just seems awfully hard to convince anyone otherwise when you try to look at it objectively. I mean, this is, again, it works out very conveniently for the Democrats, and the Republicans lose out. Yeah, all this stuff is not good in my opinion. I mean, there are legal challenges to what's going on, but I want things to remain legal and peaceful. But then you heard about the Durham report, maybe. So, for those of you who don't know, John Durham, it's basically just, before Trump left office, he set up a special prosecutor who investigate the claims around the Russia hoax from the 2016 election. And the Durham report came out recently, and this guy basically concluded that this was completely inappropriate for the FBI to do, and it's completely inappropriate for the media to engage in it as well. Now, most left-wing media, like New York Times, after using political hype, the Durham report inquiry failed to deliver. You can see all these headlines. Honestly, the Washington Post's opinion piece surprised me. The Durham report is a damning indictment of the FBI and the media. And so, basically, the Durham report confirms what we all basically knew. Hillary Clinton and the Steele dossier and the Obama administration, the FBI, all basically worked together to basically screw up Trump's administration. They kept this Trump-Russia hoax going for years and years and years, and for millions of dollars. Got a bunch of people working on it, and there's some questions of how much people actually knew, but at the end of the day, whether or not you knew you were engaging in criminal acts or not, whether you knew all the evidence or not, at a certain point, somebody should have started asking questions and realized that all this stuff is corrupt, and that, well, not even just corrupt, is that you should try and, tread with extreme care, because what you're doing is undermining our democracy, right? Isn't that what they constantly say? You're fracturing the unity of the nation. Now, obviously, there's going to be claims of the Democrats are basically going to say, oh, no, it's Trump's guy. It's completely biased. I don't buy it. Because, I mean, the Durham report does basically confirm everything that Republicans thought, that basically these people were colluding together and working together. But what I don't get is you can basically condemn what's been going on, but you don't make the effort to actually indict anyone or criminally try anyone. I mean, I think that should have been his next step, but apparently there are going to be no indictments. And that kind of bothers me. I think it's a sign of weakness. It's like you're wagging your fingers, like you guys did wrong, but we're not going to do anything about it. It's like, no, if people actually broke the law, even if it's a weak case, considering the circumstances, I think you should start the criminal indictments. That way you can get some investigations and get a better look at these things. I mean, Adam Schiff, he went on camera. Adam Schiff was basically like Joe McCarthy back in the 1950s, where it's McCarthyism and the Red Scare. We're basically just going. I mean, you had Adam Schiff. He had a whole clip where he was on TV. And he was waving around a vanilla document, basically claiming that he had the evidence that Trump was colluding with Russia and whatnot. It's just, guy was full of shit. I don't know any other way to put it. He was. And it's done permanent damage to the integrity of this country. And it's, in some ways you can say it's hard to keep caring when you know these stories and you know what everything's going to say. It's like, well, you could have figured what John Durham would find, you could have figured that he'd do nothing, and you could have figured that the Democrats probably did all these things. In some ways it's exhausting, but I think it's important to keep talking about, because I don't know what else to do. My options are limited. I'm just one guy, and I just happen to be complaining into a microphone, but it's like, I care about this stuff. Yeah, it bothers me. I don't like it, but, so I guess the best I can do is just kind of complain to whoever it is that really wants to listen. If you've listened this far, then thanks. I really appreciate it. This is just a hobby of mine. I try to do it because, well, it gives me an outlet, really, to kind of talk about this stuff, because I don't really have anyone to talk to about it. I mean, I can talk to members of my family, some friends, but it's like, mostly they're just like, I don't know. It's just, their attention span for it is limited because it makes you frustrated, it makes you upset, because it's just, you're happier without dealing with it. I mean, there is truth to saying that ignorance is bliss. And I guess to their perception, they don't quite see it as ignorance is bliss. It's like choosing to focus your mind on things that, don't frustrate you. But at the same time, it's just, what are you supposed to do? It's just, I don't want to bury my head in the sand. I don't want to turn the other way. It's like, there are problems out there. I wish things could get better. I mean, it doesn't have to be as bad as it is. Everything that's been going on. But I saw a story yesterday. Paulina Luna or something. Some GOP representative in the congressional house has basically filed to expel Schiff from Congress, and that makes sense to me. I mean, the guy leaked the classified conversations and phone calls of a American journalist called John Solomon, and I think the guy's like pretty default liberal guy, but he was also not on the door board. Like I don't like Trump, but all this stuff about him is just insane. Anyhow, Schiff somehow he was connected to all this, and Schiff basically leaked all his private information, which is pretty dirty if you ask me. I mean, there just seems to be a lot of stuff where Schiff is just connected. Like, do you remember the stuff with like that whistleblower? What's his name? Eric Charmella. I mean, that guy. That was another whistleblower that we know that Adam Schiff was working with, and apparently a bunch of he had some. The stories all kind of blur together at a certain point. But yeah, basically, this guy was he was working for the Trump admin or for the executive branch in some capacity, and he was actively leaking to Schiff, and then he went over to Schiff to basically give him information to help fuel some other witch hunt or another. For a guy who's on the House Intelligence Committee, Adam Schiff seems to be a guy who likes to leak things that serve his political interests. Not a good guy. I think he should be indicted, investigated. If he's not guilty of anything, then obviously he should be let go. But I think the guy's corrupt and dirty. But you need an investigation. You need a trial. You need to follow the orderly process. You can't devolve into a mob because mobs have no legitimacy besides the fear that they can invoke in people. And fear does not create a stable system for long. Fear is a useful tool to a degree. I mean, what you ultimately need is you need people to respect the system. They need to fear like breaking the law, but they have to respect the integrity of the system and that it works to some degree. And when you have corrupt officials, they undermine the legitimacy and the integrity. And when they're breaking the law, then everyone else doesn't see a problem with breaking the law. And then everything just kind of implodes. I don't know. I suppose that's my little domino theory of how social order should kind of work. But anyhow, if you made it this far, thanks for listening. Consider liking and subscribing. I appreciate it if you do. This is just my hobby, and I appreciate anyone who takes the time to listen to what I have to say. Thanks, and bye.